After a significant drop in mass shootings in the United States during a pandemic hit 2020, this year has already seen several deadly cases. The Gun Violence Archive says 147 mass shootings have occurred so far in 2021. Their definition of mass shootings is a minimum of 4 gunshot victims. But of course, there are other types of shootings, and one of the latest shootings by U.S. police, a chronic problem that has spurred on the Black Lives Matter movement, has claimed the life of a South African rugby player in Honolulu, Hawaii, in the United States recently. KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala has confirmed that the body of Lindani Myeni is expected to arrive in South Africa next Friday. Tshepo Matseba is a Brand Reputation Analyst, and he joins us now to talk about if the leader of the First World, as it's called, has suffered a further knock as a result of these shootings. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening, Tshepo, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
I'm just wondering, South Africa is often dubbed the crime capital of the world. Is it fitting, or should it be fitting, for the US to be crowned an equally ominous title?
Absolutely. So the level of crime in the US by typical criminals is very high, but importantly, the image that the US has and that we see of late and that we've been seeing over time is consistently of police brutality, of excessive force towards anyone who looks anything but white, anyone who is black. And of course, I understand and we know that there are white people who also suffer fatal death because of police brutality in the United States. But on the whole, research by themselves, the Americans, show that 1 out of every 1,000 African American is likely to get shot fatally by an American police officer in the United States of America. And that happens across the different states.
Now, you use the term criminal, which is quite interesting because the Honolulu police have covered their officers with glory, saying that did the right thing. There was nothing that they could have done differently. But of course, those who've seen the video and even the legal team for Mr. Myeni's wife say differently. And some experts even believe that a contagious effect sometimes seen after widely publicized suicides could be tied to the back-to-back shootings, which have followed a handful of other high-profile shootings this year. So, meaning that there's an excuse given.
Yes, so it is not new for the police in the US to, after an event of this nature, to actually craft their own version before releasing a statement. So they often are caught with that tail between their legs because they craft a version, they tamper with evidence, they shift stories, and because they lock this, they hide important evidence, they tamper with evidence, and because of that, by the time the story gets to the public, we cannot help but not believe because there's a history and a pattern in the history. If a member of the U.S. Army could not get out of his car with his hands out to demonstrate that he actually it's a surrender, and it's actually and his own words was, "I'm scared of getting shot if I actually come out of this vehicle." That shows you that there is a pattern, there's a systemic pattern, and that pattern is caused by the fact that most of the time the American police know that there are no consequences. The system has created a very comfortable environment for a lot of the police to just willy-nilly shoot people. The other day, a young African American was also shot at the hands of the police, 20-year-old Dante. And again, in the same scenario, someone actually twisted the story and said, well, I mistook a taser for a gun for a taser, so I use a taser. And so you can see that there is a systemic issue that I think at a political level, at a business level, at a civil and society level, at a legal level, America has a lot of work to do to reposition itself and do the right thing.
But surely that also comes from understanding what the source of the problem is. I mean, there was a time when it was portrayed as the land of opportunities, that getting a green card is a passport to a better life. And when US President Donald Trump came in, some people were saying the extremism that he espouses through some of his comments will lead to an increase in these kind of shooting events. The US now being accused of gross human rights violations that at a multilateral level has to be dealt with. But do people in the US see it as such?
I can't speak for the Americans, but I can say that safely, that the effect of messaging by a leader of the caliber of President Donald Trump or a leader of the caliber of President Barack Obama, the influence on the actions of society are very high, but also the influence on, because you are a commander-in-chief, and when you issue statements and make statements that President Donald Trump used to make, you actually encourage and you fuel and give confidence to wrong behavior. You give confidence to criminality, and you also give confidence to people who inherently wanted to perpetuate crime and violence against another nation, against people of color, people who are trigger happy. There are a lot of incidents where in the US where white male young students walked into a school and shoot a whole lot of people without the same level of force being muted against them. And so the responsibility of leaders and the responsibility of political leaders as a commander-in-chief is far greater than what we think President Donald Trump envisaged. I think that he had a lot of latitude, and leaders around the world did not take him on in a coordinated fashion. The United Nations was not saying a lot in a coordinated fashion. They still don't come across like they're saying enough.
But there's such a thing as when your public and private personas collide. So I'm still trying to see if there's navel gazing being done by Americans. It's often promoted that it is a land built by immigrants. But we also know that there's a lot of intolerance in the United States, that you are there, that it is palpable. You can feel if you are amongst the minority as an African American, as a brown person. But some say it's because of pandemic-related trauma and an increase in gun violence as firearm sales increase. Is it an inane intolerance, or is it because of a factor of all of these things that I've mentioned?
No, there might be a limited intolerance. There might also be a limited amount of contribution by some of the factors, but you don't see any other nation in the world where police go and shoot other police, shoot at innocent citizens, abuse innocent citizens, harass innocent citizens in the name of pressure from COVID-19. And I wouldn't want to say that every American is inherently, who is non-black, who is white, is inherently probably racist. And there are many Americans who actually oppose and condemn the behavior of the American police and this level of brutality. But generally speaking, the system at the leadership level, at the leadership of the police, the system is rotten there to a point where they are not aware of the level of costs that the country has to pay for their behavior, for these killings, because there's cost to the community, there's cost, psychological costs, but there's also costs around litigation. There's a city that paid over 50 million a couple of years ago for the fact that the police had killed an innocent person. And so I would say there's a combination of all of the above, but at a leadership level, there's no willingness to take action and take action proactively and create programs that proactively prevent this level of barbaric behavior.
So just finally, there is some research that says that shooters need validation, and that some of them have even gone as far as going to check social media to see if they find any resonance through their acts. So just talking to Brand USA and any reputational management they would need to do now, especially within this era of social media, and how it can just actually complicate things.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at commentary from South African Trevor, and Trevor has got about 11 million people on his followers. His show, The Daily Show, has about 10 million followers around the world. And when he condemns the country where he's at, the level of tension that it creates around foreign direct investment, the level of tension that it creates for individual investors who want to travel to the US, who want to go and chase what used to be called the American dream. Despite the diversity of the country, it becomes very sensitive and quite difficult for one to say, I'm leaving my shores, I'm leaving my country to go and invest or to travel in the US, because as an African, I'm more likely to be shot by the police than to be protected by the police in that country. And so Brand USA at a global leadership level needs to start speaking through co-partners such as the United Nations to condemn the actions that are happening in their country. And internally, they need to deal with their police. They need to deal with the culture in the police. They need to deal with, to root out the culture of violence. They need to deal with the arms. And they need to bring the human part of policing, which is about protecting and saving the citizens of the country.
It's a pity we've run out of time, but I want you to actually explore the concept of what is now known as a suicide by a cop because of all of this. But thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights. Tshepo Matseba, a Brand Reputation Analyst.